Let me start by saying that I'm very pleased and honored to be the co-chair of the Ambassadors Roundtable on investing in sustainable development, the way forward. The Roundtable will, as you know, close the 7th World Investment Forum. And I'm particularly pleased because I'm new in Geneva. This is the end of my third week here as the new permanent representative of the Netherlands. So it's an honor, and it's also a great opportunity to get to know you, my fellow PRs, albeit virtually for the moment. Honorable co-chair, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. We are this afternoon, or this morning for some, asked to reflect on the key outcomes of the forum for the future work of UNCTAD and the broader Geneva International Organization setting in reigniting the investment engine of growth and its contribution to sustainable development. Specifically, we will address 3 questions, 3 hows. First, how to further enhance the role of Geneva's PRs in reigniting investment as an engine for sustainable recovery. And secondly, how to improve and further facilitate interactions between permanent representatives and the business community to promote Geneva as a global hub for promoting investment in sustainable development. And thirdly, how to improve and further facilitate interactions between the various Geneva-based international organizations in the pursuit of making investment work for sustainable development. And I will now give the floor to the first speaker, His Excellency Mr. Chad Blackman, the Ambassador and Permanent Representative of Barbados to the UN and other international organizations in Geneva. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you very much, Excellency. Good morning, good afternoon, colleagues. It's all good to see you this morning, albeit virtually. Now, to put this into context, I'll start by simply saying that, of course, the 7th session of the World Investment Forum, which was convened on the back of the 15th UN Conference on Trade and Development, UNCTAD 15, has presented prime opportunities for world leaders, policymakers, the private sector, and other stakeholders to foster novel ideas and also to cooperate on how to reignite investment for global recovery. The state of global foreign direct investment flows, which has not only been felt at the macro level, but also at the level of micro, small, medium-sized enterprises, and by our people. As the world's preeminent forum to discuss investment, the World Investment Forum was therefore presented with a unique opportunity to engage in frank discourse on investing in sustainable development and to allow for stakeholders to present concrete commitments and solutions to be taken as concrete and viable ways forward. The past year has been a particularly challenging one, as the global community has had to grapple with rapidly evolving digital industrial transformation and technological advancement. The health and economic crises that have emanated from the COVID-19 pandemic, increase in global geopolitical tensions, and the ever-increasing debilitating impact of the climate crisis. In their response and recovery efforts, developing countries have realized a significant diminution of their fiscal space. As their economies virtually came to a standstill, so did the need for expanded significant financial resources and take on new loans and other instruments in order to keep our economies running and our people healthy. This came at a significant cost. I repeat, this came at a significant cost, particularly in countries that have been graduated out of concessional and other types of financing based on woefully inadequate metrics that rely solely on income per capita and which do not take into account the significant vulnerabilities of many of these countries. This is the case for a number of small island developing states, which, owing to their inherent vulnerabilities and limited fiscal space, which had already preceded the COVID-19 pandemic, have placed a number of these economies at high risk of debt distress. Investment, therefore, is viewed as a vehicle for resuscitating the global economy and also to sustainable recovery from the climate crisis, as well as those emerging from the COVID-19 pandemic. The rich deliberations held within the framework of the World Investment Forum are therefore indicative of the path that investment stakeholders will need to take if countries are to reach that allows them to attain their sustainable development objectives. Investing in sustainable recovery may not be simple, but is necessary and will require us to diversify towards crisis-resilient economic sectors, addressing the challenges and taking advantage of the opportunities presented by the digital industrial revolution, and investment in adaptation to the climate crisis. Digital industrial revolution has presented a wealth of opportunities for countries to connect to regional and global supply and value chains. Now, whilst the largest technology companies have been the main beneficiaries of these opportunities, the pandemic has increased prospects for micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises in developing countries to be integrated into the global electronic commerce framework. Reinvesting in ICT sectors in developing countries and also advancing to higher value-added goods and services and data, which have proven to be resilient to health pandemics, will be crucial to developing countries benefit from the digital industrialization. The climate crisis has exacerbated the urgency in investing in environmentally sound technologies and renewable energy sources, and green growth and green technologies have been viewed as avenues for sustainable recovery and development, as well as contributors toward climate adaptation and mitigation commitments. Attracting foreign direct investment in these areas and in maintaining the benefits thereof will, however, elude many smaller and developing states, unless, and a big unless, they have the support of the international community to access the necessary resources. If such resources are to be effective and benefit those that need them most, the criteria for accessing such resources will need to move beyond the traditional per capita income metrics, as I mentioned before, to take into account the inherent vulnerabilities of SIDS and must go beyond the traditional source of finance. Lastly, as ambassadors in Geneva, we too have a very critical role to play in investing in sustainable development. Our ministers have reaffirmed the centrality of UNCTAD's work on investment during the organization's just concluded UNCTAD 15 session. It is up to us to ensure that the mandate is fulfilled and that it redounds to the positive and lasting results of our countries and of our people, and in the process, ensuring prosperity for all. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you, Ambassador, for your wise words, your insights, and also may I compliment you on the backdrop you have behind you. It's really very impressive. Thank you for that.
Thank you very much.
I do understand that my our co-chair is now available. So Ambassador Mariela McDonald Alvarez, Ambassador and Permanent Representative of the Plurinational State of Bolivia to the UN and other international organizations in Geneva. Welcome, and may I pass the floor to you.
Thank you, Ambassador. And sorry, I had some problems on the connection. Gracias. Ahora voy a hablar en español. Excelencias, damas y caballeros. Gracias por darme la oportunidad de presentar la perspectiva del Estado Plurinacional de Bolivia sobre el panorama actual de inversiones y desarrollo. El año pasado, el Estado Plurinacional de Bolivia sufrió una profunda recesión económica después del golpe de Estado sufrido en 2019 y por el deficiente manejo del gobierno de facto durante 2019 y 2020, además del impacto devastador de la crisis sanitaria. Para las economías sin litoral y las privadas del litoral como Bolivia, el cierre de fronteras y otras medidas que restringen el movimiento internacional de bienes, servicios y personas impuestas durante las primeras etapas de la pandemia exacerbaron aún más las vulnerabilidades geográficas, dificultando nuestro acceso al transporte internacional y a los puertos marítimos y elevando los costos de modo alarmante. Durante la crisis sanitaria, Bolivia llegó a pagar hasta 10 veces más por flete, es decir, de pagar $2,000 por contenedor.
$1,000 per container coming from containers coming from China, for instance, or rather paying $20,000 instead of $2,000 for those containers. For Bolivia, investment is essential for development, including FDI. Therefore, since 2006, we have embarked on a process of reform of international agreements in order to achieve a better balance and greater benefits for our country. We recognize that FDI is relatively small compared to the size of our economy. Therefore, we think it is essential to promote investment opportunities in our economy and to continue the process of economic reconstruction and recovery that began at the end of last year. This shows positive effort through the main indicators during the first semester of this year. There's been a growth prospect of 5.5% according to the latest data from the World Bank, thus maintaining constant and sustained growth since 2014, except for the period in 2020 that I mentioned. Maybe this is a unique opportunity. As we saw during the World Investment Forum, the key role of clean alternative energies in economic recovery will increase the demand for green energy. Bolivia is very rich in terms of essential minerals, including lithium. This is a key mineral for batteries, and we intend to build a renewable energies center for development, which will maintain harmony with Mother Earth and the environment. This week has been an opportunity for me and other Bolivian civil servants to learn more about global, regional, and national initiatives to promote and facilitate investment through the multiple sessions that focus on strengthening and reorienting the work of investment promotion agencies. But we have also heard a lot about how to maximize the impact of FDI on achieving the SDGs. We're still falling short of the mark in terms of SDGs in developing countries. Therefore, it is essential to deploy greater efforts to mobilize and channel funds towards priority sectors. It is also necessary to adopt best practices in trade in order to ensure that investments have a positive impact. We had the opportunity to learn from the best practices and examples of other countries and the work of international organizations, and UNCTAD in particular. I would like to express our gratitude to UNCTAD for its work and for funding international projects, in particular for landlocked developing countries such as Bolivia. This form of financing, when properly implemented, could be key for channeling funds towards investment in infrastructure and other relevant key sectors for sustainable development, including renewable energy, water, sanitation, and hospitals. We are looking forward very much to the results of this new research project. We therefore welcome as well the launching of the Global Observatory on Sustainable Finance of the United Nations, which we view as a valuable tool for stepping up global financing for development goals. Despite the challenges posed by the virtual format, the World Investment Forum this year managed to attract a broad audience and also to keep up the momentum for working on investment and SDGs at the global level. For Bolivia, the sessions on the preparation for a pandemic after COVID-19, investing in production and the supply of vaccines for low and middle income countries, and the session on women's empowerment were particularly valuable. We'd like to commend UNCTAD for its leadership and for holding this World Investment Forum. To conclude, I would like to express the support of the plurinational state of Bolivia for the work of the permanent missions in Geneva in their efforts to find solutions for financing for SDGs and for establishing an initiative that can carry forward our work. Thank you.
Thank you, Excellency, Ambassador, my honorable co-chair, for your words. It's good to have you with us. Now I would like to pass the floor to His Excellency Yuri Ambrazevich, the Ambassador and Permanent Representative of Belarus to the UN and other international organizations in Geneva. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Благодарю вас, уважаемый модератор,
Moderator, Secretary General, ladies and gentlemen, I am glad that the traditional Ambassadors Roundtable in UNCTAD continues. This time, our event concludes the 7th World Investment Forum. The key topic of the forum was the recovery after the COVID-19 pandemic and the role of sustainable investment in this process. During the various events of the forum, representatives of states, international organizations, business, and academia actively sought an answer to the question, how can we mobilize global investment and its system? How can we overcome negative trends? How can we achieve the famous Build Back Better motto in relation to investment? I'd like to give my 2 cents in this discussion. I will focus mainly on 2 topical phenomena. One of them can be considered an effective instrument for post-COVID recovery. The other, on the other hand, if we continue to turn a blind eye to it, could throw us backwards and harm our efforts to achieve sustainable development. Let me begin with this negative one. UNCTAD 15, in its paragraph 99 of the Bridgetown Pact, specifically named it. It explicitly recommended to states to refrain from adopting or imposing any unilateral economic, financial, or trade measures that are incompatible with international law and the UN Charter. UNCTAD members express concern with regard to the restrictive nature and consequences on the development of countries of these measures, as they have a negative impact on populations' well-being and can hamper the comprehensive achievement of economic and social development in states affected by such measures, and they can also worsen their trade relations. It is no secret that the world of investment suffers from unilateral measures just as much as trade. These measures block financial flows, which makes it more difficult to create new or support existing joint ventures. They hamper investment through merging and acquisitions. Unilateral coercive measures artificially shrink markets and breach the value creation chains. This also has a negative impact on one's ability to attract investment. I'd like to highlight that we cannot, on the one hand, call for an active restoration of trade and investment flows, while on the other, turning a blind eye to the actions of individual states and their blocs, which deliberately stand in the way of such recovery. The international community must recognize that the use of unilateral coercive measures runs counter to international law and is incompatible with multilateralism. It is incompatible with sustainable recovery and development. In contrast, there is the question, what do we need to do? What positive pathway can we choose? Let me focus on one of the possible ways forward. We are convinced that recovery and development, including in the field of investment, largely depends on our ability to tap the potential of regional and interregional integrations. Currently, as the state of affairs in the world is weighed down by the COVID-19 consequences and by centrifugal political trends, it is precisely regional integration and interregional cooperation that we believe can help us lay the foundation for recovery and development. UNCTAD's members supported this point of view by enshrining in the organization's new mandate issues linked to regional integration and the promotion of dialogue between regional integration organizations. Belarus contributed to drawing attention to this topic as we spoke out jointly with Barbados and UNCTAD Secretariat as co-organizers of the online conference, using the potential of interregional integration for achieving the SDGs, an event that took place in May. Representatives from governments, high-level representatives, as well as representatives of regional integration organizations, their secretariats, and leaders of multilateral organizations discussed during that conference the prospects for sharing experiences and best practices in terms of promoting integration, as well as cooperation between regional integrational organizations with a view to achieving sustainable development. As a summary of the discussion that took place during the conference in May, we provided as food for thought a document which is available on the Permanent Missions website here in Geneva. We believe that this is very useful in terms of future regional and interregional integration. It considers the general principles of trade investment that can apply to all countries, and the members of regional integration organizations help guarantee greater predictability in the investment climate, and this protects foreign investors from risks and therefore creates the conditions necessary for boosting investment in the region. To conclude, I would like to point out that the exchange of experience between integration organizations helps us to adopt best investment strategies and to improve legislation, thereby fostering a better investment climate. The program of the Seventh World Investment Forum included an event on integration, a roundtable, which looked at how integration influenced global and regional investment trends in recent years and how it can potentially impact them in the future. We welcome the hosting of this event, and we would like to express our hopes that UNCTAD will in the future continue to attach attention to regional integration and cooperation between integration organizations, including in the field of investment. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ambrosievich, for your words. Thank you. And I would now like to pass the floor to Ambassador Jose Valencia, Ambassador and Permanent Representative of Ecuador to the WTO, another economic international organization in Geneva. Your Excellency, Valencia, the floor is yours.
Muchas gracias, Excelencia.
Very much. Dear friends, whom I can see on the screen, ladies and gentlemen, as we seek to achieve progress and development, the role of investment is clearly essential. The role of states consists in encouraging and facilitating investments that have positive economic effects as well as social and labor effects, and which therefore help progress and sustainable development and ensure medium-term and long-term continuity. The government of Ecuador has a clear goal in this respect, and therefore the decisions taken in respect of promoting investment are geared towards creating in Ecuador an investment-friendly environment for investments that will help economic and environmental sustainability and help develop clusters and ensure sustainable development for Ecuador. Ecuador is aware of the fact that a virtuous dynamic trend for investment requires not just political will and proper institutional management in the recipient countries, but it also requires the role of other stakeholders, such as private investors, countries emitting investments, and the international community, in particular through the development of programs and activities that encourage responsible and sustainable investments. Ladies and gentlemen, in practice, for Ecuador, this dynamic for fostering investments needs to take into account programs and policies that take account of the support that should be provided to small and medium-sized enterprises and the incorporation of these companies in value chains and broader clusters with an international and regional reach. The promotion of foreign direct investments is necessary in order to promote national development within respect for labor, tax, and environmental sustainability considerations. The impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on the life of our states suggests that investments should also give due regard to factors which were already seen as being increasingly important, but which have now taken on a whole new meaning. And by that, I'm referring to ICTs, as well as the digitalization of procedures and the effective distribution of services and transfer of knowledge and capacity building, as well as, of course, a gender-based approach and inclusive approach in order to make sure that we help all those who are affected by the factors I mentioned. We believe that it's necessary to create an enabling environment. As we said during the special event a couple of days ago, at this, when we heard from Côte d'Ivoire. And during this edition of the forum, there was the option for us to connect with new ideas under the aegis of UNCTAD. In particular, we were struck by the Global Alliance for Sustainable Investment, which will take place in conjunction with the World Investment Forum, and the Global Alliance will help consolidate efforts towards sustainable investments and will also help the WTO's work in terms of investment facilitation for development, a matter on which Ecuador has always been very active. Secondly, I'd like to highlight the initiative of the UN's Observatory for Global Sustainable Financing, which will, without a doubt, help systemize and promote sustainability criteria in terms of global investments. Ecuador will continue working very closely with UNCTAD and its Secretariat and the Secretary General, Rebecca Greenspan, to accelerate the implementation of ideas and programs that emerged over the last few days and which will be carried out through the organization's activities. We commend the successful carrying out of the World Investment Forum and distinguished colleagues and friends with whom we have been attending this World Investment Forum with. We are convinced that we're on the right path. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Ambassador Valencia. And now it's my honor to pass the floor to His Excellency, Mr. Zenebe Kebede Kocho, Ambassador and Permanent Representative of Ethiopia to the UN and other international organizations. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Honorable co-chairs, excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I would like to begin by thanking the UNCTAD for organizing this World Investment Forum Ambassadors Roundtable on investing in sustainable development, the way forward, and inviting me to participate. During the last Ambassadors Roundtable, it was noted that investment together with financing is a key driver for sustainable development and implementing the SDGs. The roundtable also underlined the annual financing gap in developing countries, and hence the need to coordinate the work between permanent missions, civil society, the private sector, and international organizations. Today, with the COVID-19 pandemic, we are in a more challenging situation. As the COVID-19 pandemic unfolds, the progress towards SDGs is once again in a danger of slowing. With the increasing inequalities, not all countries have the capacity to raise necessary funds on domestic or international market to effectively respond and recover from the crisis. All the more so, financing for the sustainable development of developing countries is more unstable, unstable, with all resources available are under stress, whether domestic, external, or public or private. One can say that the health crisis is quickly converting into an economic crisis with a large magnitude for potential long-lasting effects on inequality and development. At the same time, rising public debt and debt servicing costs, particularly in poorest countries, are putting SDGs financing level under enormous pressure. The looming challenge in Africa are wide and deep and will require innovative responses that are embedded in partnership and solidarity. In this connection, international private sector investment flows to developing and transitionally in sectors relevant to the Sustainable Development Goals are extremely important, in addition to boosting the mobilization of domestic resources for investment. Likewise, attractive investment policies and conducive business environment make an important contribution in attracting foreign direct investment and tackling the devastating economic and social effects of the pandemic, the COVID-19 pandemic. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, in Ethiopia, the government has undertaken successive reforms, including a multidimensional homegrown economic reform and an ambitious 10-year plan and growth strategy to enhance the role of the private sector in the economy. The reform agenda promises to build upon past achievements while addressing the structural challenge to catalyze private sector-led economic growth in the years ahead so as to create more jobs and new economic opportunities, alleviate poverty, and thereby contribute to the overall development of the economy. The reformed economic policies focus also on national development priorities by incorporating environmental, social, and governance dimensions, focusing on climate resilient green economic strategy. For instance, industrial parks in Ethiopia are designed and constructed in strict compliance with environmental safety and protection standards, including water and waste treatment plants with zero liquid discharge technology to ensure that no pollutant matter or waste is released into the ecosystem. Finally, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it is my hope that today's deliberation will serve as a showcase of our commitment and a catalyst for our fruitful future engagements. I thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador Corcho, for your words. Thank you. Before I pass the floor to the next speaker, a kind request to everybody online. Please do make sure your microphones are muted, preventing any disturbance for the speakers. Thank you for that. And now I pass the floor to His Excellency Dr. Hans-Peter Jubel, Ambassador and Permanent Representative of the Federal Republic of Germany to the Office of the United Nations and to the other international organizations in Geneva. Dr. Jubel, Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Yeah, thank you very much. Thank you very much, co-chairs, ladies and gentlemen. I would like to thank UNCTAD, especially Mrs. Rebecca Greenstepan, as well as the Division on Investment and Enterprise for organizing this World Investment Forum. The World Investment Forum took place, and every one of us is aware, in one of the most challenging times for the world, and its virtual nature underscored how important it is for the global investment community to get together and discuss economic recovery and sustainable development in the post-COVID-19 era. All of our economies have suffered from the pandemic's impact on economic activity, including trade and investment within countries and amongst nations. And for many of us, the end to the suffering is not in sight. But there are some encouraging signs on the horizon. And there's the common notion of our joint approach in seizing the opportunity to build back better and reform international investment and the international production systems to make greater use of regional networks and international cooperation. Global problems require global solution, and the UNCTAD World Investment Forum provides the unchallenged platform for doing just that, finding global solutions to global problems. As the World Investment Report 2021 and the latest Global Investment Trends Monitor launch at the beginning of the week note, global investment flows declined sharply during the crisis, and economic and investment recovery is precarious and may take some time. However, there are signs of an FDI rebound, and although highly uneven as of today. The convening of the World Investment Forum could not have come at a better time, hence. From Germany's perspective, I'm pleased to note that we took full advantage of the platform with our Federal Minister of Economic Affairs and Energies and many other colleagues, and above all, private sector participating actively in the relevant sessions of the forum. From our perspective, these sessions were useful in allowing to share our views and hear participants outline new strategies for economic organization of international supply chains that will in the future concentrate more on the regions. This will require greater cooperation amongst countries in the regions and may require technical support from organizations such as UNCTAD. In this connection, we found very useful the launching of the Handbook on Special Economic Zones in Africa and the follow-on work on this matter, which is supported by the German government. We also appreciated the forum's Ministerial Roundtable on Entrepreneurship and Sustainable Recovery post-COVID-19, and its emphasis on sharing our country's experiences in boosting small and medium enterprises through institutional changes, improving their digital preparedness and their capacity to adhere to good environmental, social, and corporate governance practices. Finally, we appreciated the Ministerial Roundtable on Investment for Sustainable Development. This session outlined new ideas on building back better by investing in infrastructure and social projects and climate projects. Efforts to attract international private capital for infrastructure projects need strengthening, and thus we welcome the initiative to start new research and policy analysis on international project finance. To conclude, I would like to thank again UNCTAD and the Division on Investment and Enterprise for organizing this memorable and very pertinent investment event. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Jugel, for your kind words also for UNCTAD. And now I'd like to give the floor to the next speaker on the list, who is the ambassador of Indonesia, Her Excellency Bedaning Tias, Ambassador and Permanent Representative of the Republic of Indonesia to the UN and other international organizations. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Excellency, Ambassador, and distinguished delegates. I'm, of course, pleased to be part of the 7th World Investment Forum and to address this session on the way forward on a rethinking of how we can enhance the interaction and the role of Geneva-based investment development community. So while the 7th World Investment Forum might end today, the purpose of today's discussion is actually to trigger a new start, especially when the path to invest in sustainable development needs to be navigated in the midst of COVID-19 pandemic crisis. And primarily, against this backdrop, I would like to share my thoughts on several points. First, the COVID-19 pandemic has taught us the importance of investing in the long run and sustainable investment that not only contribute to the economic growth, but also build a socio-economic resilience to the future shock. At the Global Leader Investment Forum of the WIF, on the 19th of October, on behalf of President Jokowi, our Minister for Investment stated the importance of upholding sustainable development, which encompasses not only environmental protection, but also positive social impact and mutually beneficial economic partnership. And to meet this objective, Indonesia is continued to promote investment in a number of priority sectors, including export-oriented industry, especially in the pharmaceutical industry, automotive, and electronic industry. We also keen to promote infrastructure sectors, energy sectors, especially the renewable energy sectors, hearing the call for a more environmental friendly ways of industry. The current global equity crisis in the pandemic countermeasure shows us that the utmost important to build a country capacity to produce medical and pharmaceutical goods and to strengthen the health system to build resilience and preparedness, including in anticipation of potential future health crises that might jeopardize the multitude sectors of our life. Investing in sustainable development will also mean creation of reliable and sustainable value chains and inclusion in regional global value chain. These are keys to thrive, raising productivity of our economy. Data shows that COVID-19 pandemic has brought unprecedented challenge to the global supply chains worldwide, with the global trade to fall by 9.5% and the FDI by 35% in 2020. Secondly, in order to realize investments as an engine for sustainable recovery, Geneva Investment Development Community need to be at the forefront in galvanizing the multilateralism process that promote inclusive and conducive environment for investment and economy as a whole, turning the slogan "Leaving no one behind" into a fair and opportunity opening investment rule, norm setting, and policy. It is mostly important to be inclusive. Our economic transformation must incorporate micro, small, and medium-sized enterprises, including empower women and youth-owned that run MSMEs and startups. Investing in skill training and entrepreneurial education that instill an entrepreneurial mindset includes specialized topics such as financial and digital literacy, creative economy, can help particularly new entrepreneurs to innovate, create value added in formal economy. Like many countries in Indonesia, SMEs constitute the backbone of our economy and as well as global economy, which account for over 2/3 of the global employment and even reach 80 and 90% in low-income countries. Therefore, the post-COVID-19 recovery need to underscore the importance and the role of entrepreneurship and MSMEs in social and economic development. COVID-19 pandemic has caused significant job losses in our society, and there will be many who will be looking for entrepreneurship opportunity, try to find ways to build their own opportunities. Thirdly, I would like also to underscore the importance of exchange of view and facilitating interaction between international organization and permanent mission in Geneva to build a more coordinated multilateral process. Policy coherence between investment, trade, and industrial area is the key to sustainable economic recovery. As a global hub of and the headquarter of many international organizations on issue of strategic importance related to investment, trade, and health, Geneva community can contribute to not only shaping the global discourse, but also to connect policy-making pillars with business community that could offer ample opportunity to enhance prosperity of our people. Recover together, recover stronger is the theme of Indonesia G20 presidency next year. Aside of establishing partnership with relevant international organizations here in Geneva, including UNCTAD, we believe that interaction among Geneva-based permanent mission will be of high value for Indonesia's role in formulating and promoting our common agenda of prioritizing investment in sustainable development through various G20 platforms and beyond. Excellencies, we look forward to enhanced interaction among Geneva Investment Development Community, permanent mission, international organization to make investment work for sustainable development that provide impact to people on the ground. And this 7th World Investment Forum is indeed another chapter for us to prove that by working together, we can make investment work for sustainable development, economic recovery from COVID-19 pandemic. I thank you, Excellencies.
Thank you, Ambassador. Much appreciated. Now I'd like to continue with the following speaker, which is Her Excellency Ms. Zana Aitsanova, Ambassador and Permanent Representative of the Republic of Kazakhstan to the UN and other international organizations in Geneva. Ambassador, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Chair. Dear Secretary General, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, it's a great pleasure for me to participate at closing session of the 7th World Investment Forum. This is a good opportunity today to reflect on major dimensions for strengthening cooperation of members with UNCTAD and other Geneva-based international organizations with the objective to improve investment climate and build back better from the pandemic. The COVID-19 pandemic caused unprecedented challenges with far-reaching negative social and economic impacts and resulted in the steepest fall in global trade and investments. The global public health crisis has acted as a supply, demand, and policy shock for investments, which is a key source of income for developing countries and LDCs and engine for economic growth and sustainable development. In 2020, global FDI flows declined by 42%, which is more than 30% below the decline caused by the 2008 global financial crisis. Greenfield investments, which are key to foster economies, productive capacity, and infrastructure development, fell by 46%, according to the UNCTAD's World Investment Report for 2020. It is critical for governments to improve investment climate to effectively respond to the pandemic, improve resilience in health system, and harness the related infrastructure, and also supporting economic recovery and efforts to build more resilient economies. To combat the effects of the pandemic, the government of Kazakhstan implemented several packages of anti-crisis program for the amount of $13 billion. Government support provided to systematically important enterprises to avoid jobs and wage cuts. To strengthen health system and develop the necessary infrastructure, the government of Kazakhstan introduced a complex national plan for development of pharmaceuticals and healthcare industry for the period of 2020-2025, with the objective to increase production of pharmaceuticals and medical equipment and provision of healthcare-related services. This creates opportunities for investors to leverage on these industries' untapped potential in my country. The COVID-19 pandemic as a global issue requires a coordinated global response and international solidarity. In this context, UNCTAD plays a significant role in facilitating the efforts being undertaken by UN member states through its cooperation programs and expertise to mitigate and recover from the economic impacts of the pandemic. Kazakhstan and UNCTAD have long-standing fruitful cooperation and successfully implemented various important technical assistance projects aimed at improving Kazakhstan's investment and trade policy. With the support of UNCTAD, I would like to note that we successfully implemented the Asikuda project, aimed at simplification of customs procedures through building one-stop shop for export-import operations in our country. In current circumstances, The Astana One, it's a project called in Kazakhstan, which is, as I have mentioned, implemented through Asikuda program of UNCTAD, enabled customs authorities to comply with COVID-19 conditions and continue their direct work remotely. The system also allowed processing of customs transactions and payments without physical interventions and prompt administration of national emergency measures related to facilitation of export and import operations. This has also impacted Kazakhstan's position in the World Bank's Doing Business ranking from 36th place in 2017 to 25th place in 2020. And it also had the direct impact on the investments. And in this regard, I would like to note that thanks to structural reforms and the policy implemented by the government to improve the investment climate, despite the negative impact of COVID-19 pandemic on the global as well as the national economy, according to UNCTAD, Kazakhstan in 2020 demonstrated the largest increase in net foreign direct investments among 17 countries with a transition economy and 34 landlocked countries. And I also would like to emphasize with the appreciation that we enjoyed valuable expertise from UNCTAD to review in the existing investment treaties. And UNCTAD experts have made recommendations which are important for the development of the model investment agreement of new generations, which will enhance investment cooperation with other countries, as well as contribute to protect national interests and priorities of my country in the context of the pandemic. And as chair of the 12th WTO Ministerial Conference, I also would like to emphasize the new rulemaking efforts which are being undertaken within the World Trade Organization, and most particularly the Agreement on Investment Facilitation for Development. The future agreement will set global benchmarks for developing countries and LDCs in the implementation of investment facilitating measures aimed at enhancing transparency of the investment regulation, improving the efficiency of investment-related administrative procedures, and fostering better relationship with investors, including through single windows for investors. And many countries have not, majority of developing countries, LDCs, they have mentioned lack of capacity for the necessary infrastructure to attract foreign direct investments. And in this regard, we believe that UNCTAD, through its one-stop shop for investors, can help governments to simplify and digitalize investment and business procedures. And to this end, we would like to suggest that UNCTAD, International Trade Center, and WTO enhance cooperation with the support of the Geneva-based permanent missions of countries to provide necessary technical assistance to implement the future WTO agreement on investment facilitation for development and help developing countries and LDCs who are still hesitating to join these negotiations with the necessary human resources and institutional resources and help them to join this agreement and to implement them in the future when the agreement is adopted. Successful cooperation of developing members with the Geneva-based international organizations will help mobilize further support from developing members and LDCs to join these ongoing plurilateral negotiations and discussions and to reach the multilateral outcome on this agreement. So in this regard, we stand ready to help UNCTAD as well as to work with other permanent missions here in Geneva in order to undertake the necessary technical expertise, assistance projects for developing countries, LDCs, to enhance the investment climate in their countries. We thank you for your attention.
Thank you very much, Ambassador, for raising those points. Valuable. Thank you. Now I'd like to continue to giving the floor to His Excellency Mr. Tao Lee, Ambassador and Permanent Representative of the Mission of the Republic of Korea to the UN and other international organizations in Geneva. Ambassador Lee, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Thank you very much. Good afternoon, Ambassador Beckers, Excellencies and distinguished colleagues. Korea attaches increasing significance to the World Investment Forum as one of the world's top 10 countries in terms of FDI outflows. This year, Korea had its first ever ministerial participation in the forum. At the Ministerial Roundtable held yesterday, Korea's Minister of Trade, Industry and Energy laid out Korea's drive to facilitate investment in green transition, digital transformation, and industrial innovation to promote sustainable development. That said, how do we better promote Geneva as a global hub for promoting investment in sustainable development? To answer this question, we needed to start, in my view, with a recognition of the special but often overlooked position that Geneva has in the world of investment. First of all, Geneva-based UNCTAD is the de facto thought leader on investments and investment policy-related issues. UNCTAD's annual World Investment Report is the to-go authority, not only in terms of global data on investment flows, but also on trends in investment policies at the national and international levels. UNCTAD's role as a thought leader is evident in the IIA Reform Accelerator and Investment Policy Framework, which help guide efforts to modernize older generation international investment agreements. UNCTAD's recommendations on circumscribing the scope of most favored nation clause in investment agreements, among others, is consistent with Korea's approach to modernizing existing BITs. The work that UNCTAD does in this regard is conducive to advancing negotiations in the WTO. Delegations, including the Korean delegation, draws upon UNCTAD's decades-long work on investment treaties as they come to WTO negotiating table. It is encouraging that in Bridgetown Covenant adopted at the 15th UNCTAD conference 2 weeks ago, UNCTAD members collectively endorsed UNCTAD's role in helping reform and modernize the international investment regime. Second, as we speak, more than 100 WTO members are negotiating an agreement on investment facilitation for development. Although some might take exception to the fact that this is a plurilateral negotiation rather than an agreement being negotiated by all WTO members, such arguments have to be put into perspective. The most recent serious attempt to negotiate an international agreement dedicated to investment was the Multilateral Agreement on Investment, or MIA, in the late 90s. MIA was negotiated at OECD, and therefore the number of parties was far more limited compared to the investment facilitation JSI here in WTO. Yet, due to the sensitivities surrounding its scope, MIA was met with widespread criticism by civil society and many countries. The ongoing negotiations on investment facilitation at the WTO is far more transparent and inclusive, with the developing countries comprising the majority of the nearly 2/3 of the WTO members in the negotiations. Furthermore, by excluding market access, investment protection, and investor-state dispute settlement, investment facilitation negotiations have been by and large free of criticism. Development is also a key pillar of the agreement. We would urge other WTO members that have yet to join the negotiations to do so. Third, Geneva is home to a number of investment-related stakeholders that are critical to the nexus of investments and sustainable development. The International Organization of Employers, IOE, headquartered here in Geneva, has been focusing on responsible business conduct and sustainable development, in addition to more traditional issues concerning industrial relations. The International Labour Organization, ILO, has also been doing work on socially responsible investment and decent work, seeking to make sure business activities are aligned with the human-centered agenda adopted by the ILO. It is therefore, I believe, to bring these three strengths together if we are to make Geneva a true hub for sustainable development. Sustainable investment. The World Investment Forum provides an effective platform for facilitating interaction and enhancing synergy among these different tracks, serving as a thought leader on modernizing the investment regime, advancing negotiations on a WTO agreement dedicated to investment, and providing a sustainability compass for business investments. We look forward to continuing to work with the UNCTAD along this journey. I thank you very much.
Thank you, Ambassador Lee. And with that, I come to the end of my co-chairmanship. Excellencies, I do thank you for your highly valuable remarks, for the many good suggestions that came across, and for your support to my co-chairmanship. And I do appreciate also that you all kept to the allotted time. And now it is my pleasure to hand over the session to my fellow co-chair, Ambassador McDonald Alvarez. Madam, the floor is yours. Thank you.
Thank you, Honorable Co-Chair, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. It is a great honor for me to co-chair the Ambassador's Roundtable on investment in SDGs. I thank my co-chair, His Excellency Paul Beckers, Ambassador and Permanent Representative of the Kingdom of the Netherlands to the UN and other international organizations in Geneva, for his able co-chairmanship and for his cooperation during the first part of this roundtable. Now I have the honor to invite him to take the floor in his capacity as the permanent representative of Kingdom of the Netherlands to the UN and other international organizations in Geneva. Your Excellency, you have the floor.
Yeah, thank you, Madam Chair. I just pulled up another chair, so I have another role now. I'm pleased to indeed now speak as a participant and in my national capacity, and also thank UNCTAD for the organization of the first virtual World Investment Forum. It's been an intense week with a great number of meetings involving participants from all over the world. And I'm proud to share with you that representatives of the Kingdom of the Netherlands actively contributed to these discussions. Foremost, the Prime Minister of Aruba, Her Excellency Ms. Wever Cruz, delivered her inspiring remarks on attracting and retaining investment in tourism last Tuesday. And some of you already suggested, and I concur, that one of the key outcomes of our conversations this week is the continued need to invest in the SDGs. As the World Investment Report shows, the COVID-19 crisis caused a dramatic fall in foreign direct investment. The decline was heavily skewed towards developed economies. And I'd like to add to figures already given by others. Flows to Europe fell by 80%. And conversely, investment flows to LDCs remained stable. Investments can play an important role in stimulating growth and innovation in both developed and developing economies. However, as you all know, not every investment is a good investment. Not every investment contributes to sustainable development. Investments in infrastructure, the health sector, as well as greenfield investments in developing countries are examples of investments that could contribute to recover from the pandemic, to build back better and to achieving the 2030 agenda. The goal should be to ensure that recovery is sustainable and that it's been extended to all countries and all people. It is, however, precisely such investments that have registered double-digit declines from the pre-COVID level. So an enormous task waits in front of us. Let me briefly make 3 points. First, We need to strengthen partnership with the private sector. ODA cannot fill the investment gap alone. The private sector is an ally, not the enemy, in achieving the sustainable development goals. Secondly, governments need to improve their policy frameworks and generate a viable pipeline of bankable projects to attract investments for sustainable recovery. This requires a whole of government approach and involvement of all relevant stakeholders. And thirdly, and I'll end with that, multilateral and regional trade rules can contribute to fostering investment flows for development. The WTO negotiations on investment facilitation and the African Continental Free Trade Agreement provide excellent examples of initiative that can make a difference. Thank you, Madam Chair. Back to you.
Thank you, Excellency, for your insightful remarks. Now I will give the floor to His Excellency. I don't know if he's connected, to the Permanent Representative of Lebanon to the UN and other international organizations in Geneva, Ambassador Salim Boudoura.
Thank you, Chair. I would like to convey Ambassador Salim Boudoura's apologies for not being able to attend this roundtable due to an urgent engagement. I will read his statement on his behalf. Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen, I commend the organizers of this important roundtable, and I am honored to take part in its debates. We believe that interaction between permanent representatives and the private sector under facilitation of the relevant international organizations here in Geneva is very useful. Having in mind the importance of SDGs, it is beneficial to exchange openly about our respective priorities and constraints. It is crucial as well to put our analytical capacities in common to try to sort out the complexities and uncertainties of the current context characterized by huge transformations at all levels. As diplomats, we are aware that our countries should always keep on improving business and investment environment, scaling up the fight against corruption, and implementing national mechanisms to assess the impact of public policies on SDGs. But we have to be cognizant that often chronic political instability overshadows our long-term views oriented towards SDGs. The pandemic and its ramifications are very toxic, but they shouldn't be held accountable of all our woes. We, of course, are aware of the multifaceted disruptions they have entailed, but we should keep in mind that COVID acted essentially as an accelerator of pre-existing dysfunctions and distortions, chief among which are rising inequality, ultra-protectionist measures, erratic public policies, unbridled and opaque global finance, fragile global value chains, let alone the geopolitical conflicts. Hence, it is vital to reverse the decline of multilateralism and to revive the luster of international organizations and mechanisms as vehicles for more cooperation and less individualistic politics. In this regard, it is imperative to improve the international financial, regulatory, and supervisory regime to adapt it to current transformations and to make it more congenial to sustainable development while being resilient to shocks. On the other hand, we are well aware that the private sector has its own standards and benchmarks in terms of investment. But this pandemic should act as an eye-opener. Business plans and investment strategies should cohere more with the necessity to build a more resilient, sustainable, immune to shocks global economic and trade system. This is, of course, a shared responsibility between private and public actors. In the same vein, this should lead us to re-examine our perception of investment as more than just a way to make profit and seek higher returns. It should also be seen in a wider perspective as part of an insurance policy in a world transforming on a dizzying pace. By creating more fortified, resilient systems everywhere, we avoid paralyzing the world economy when major crises hit. In that regard, we look favorably at UNCTAD's proposed action plan for the promotion of investment to build productive capacity in key segments of the healthcare industry in support of SDG 3, and we look forward to more similar initiatives in other vital sectors. That being said, promoting investment in sustainable recovery, albeit very important, should not lead us into overlooking industries, both manufacturing and services, which are key to a healthy labor market and to the growth in productive capacity, and which were hit the hardest by the pandemic. In a wider perspective, we commend the role that UNCTAD is playing as the leading multilateral organization that is examining and looking for solutions to all the impediments that keep our countries from reaching their development potential and participate in international trade on equal grounds. Our countries collectively renewed this mandate with the Bridgetown Covenant recently adopted, and we look forward to implementing it during the next 4 years. At a similar table 2 years ago, we emphasized the fact of FDI growth being more concentrated on certain regions and sectors. Nowadays, two years into the pandemic, we are learning firsthand about the price we had to pay due to this imbalance. As for the root causes of volatility, they still have to be thoroughly addressed and assessed. Likewise, tax evasion, illicit financial flows, and other major factors that further contribute to this disparity. And finally, if we are to harness altogether the current opportunities to recover and overcome impediments to sustainable prosperity, it is our common interest to renew our commitment to the SDGs as the only existing frameworks that could harmonize public policies, internationally agreed targets, and private sector projects. In this sense, we renew our commitment to optimize the role of diplomats in SDG investment promotion, and we hope that we can all seize this post or mid-pandemic momentum to get back on track with SDG advancement. Thank you, Chair.
Thank you to the distinguished delegate from Lebanon, and please send our regards to your ambassador. Now we are going to hear His Excellency Omar Niber, Ambassador and Primary Representative of Morocco to the UN and other international organizations in Geneva, by a video statement.
Monsieur le Président, Madame la Secrétaire Générale, Excellences, Mesdames et Messieurs, permettez-moi tout d'abord d'exprimer notre gratitude aux autorités des Émirats arabes unis qui ont bien voulu accueillir cette importante réunion qui traite d'une question importante dans le contexte mondial actuel. Nous souhaitons...
Subject. We would like to pay tribute to the Division on Investment of UNCTAD for the organizing of this 2021 edition of the World Leaders Investment Forum. President, COVID-19 seriously slowed down sustainable development and has led to a collapse of investment in SDG relevant sectors in developing countries. Given the scale and the multitude of the challenges that stand, a coherent policy is necessary in order to promote investment in a resilient manner and to balance measures targeting infrastructure and other sectors and to roll out recovery programs. A large share of the necessary resources for funding development should come from the business community, that is, say, the private sector. This reality is more true now than ever before because of COVID-19. The UN system, as well as the international community, are called upon to place an emphasis on the fundamental role that the private sector and other development partners should play. In this context, the permanent representative to Geneva and UNCTAD have a key role to play in order to promote initiatives to encourage the business community to work with international institutions for development, as well as with civil society and government agencies. We need to convince investors that sustainable development and investment in SDGs are of the essence, not just for the well-being of people and planet, but also for their companies. President, allow me to share with you some of Morocco's experiences in the field of investment and implementation of the SDGs. Under the direction of His Majesty the King, Morocco is among the countries in Africa to have been at the forefront of sustainable development efforts, in particular investment in renewable energies and primarily solar power. We intend to increase the share of renewable energies in the energy mix to 52% by 2030, which should create several thousand jobs in the sector. We are also working for sustainable and resilient agriculture. Therefore, we are channeling investments to that sector in order to deliver tangible local impacts. Because of the impact of the COVID-19 pandemic on our socioeconomic development, like other countries, the Kingdom of Morocco has a national recovery plan aimed at injecting $12 billion into our economy, and we intend to help key productive sectors as well as ensure good coverage for our vulnerable population. In terms of our continental-wide efforts, true to our commitments with our development partners, Morocco sets great store by Africa, and we are striving to strengthen Africa's immunity in the face of COVID-19 and to further efforts in order to achieve the SDGs and achieve the Agenda 2030. Morocco is the second investor in Africa and the leading investor in Western Africa, and we intend to step up our investment presence in Africa through a win-win partnership and multi-sectoral investments that will have a clear impact in terms of achieving the SDGs. Like other African countries, Morocco places great hope on the ZLECAf as a large-scale continental initiative which will channel investments to more productive investment sectors. Casablanca Finance City, the first finance center on the continent, is testimony to Morocco's commitment to South-South investment, in particular when it comes to our fellow countries on the African continent, and in particular to foster a banking system which is today properly represented in 35 countries of Africa. We intend to invest in multiple African countries in different sectors, by way of example, agriculture and social housing. These sectors involve the investment in sustainable development projects and human development initiatives, and Morocco has a number of exemplary initiatives which can stand as an example for our partners, in particular our partners in Africa. Thank you.
Thank you. Now I give the floor to His Excellency Ms. Tiltagay Demjaha, Ambassador and Permanent Representative of the Republic of North Macedonia to the United Nations and other international organizations in Geneva. Madam.
Thank you. Your Excellencies, Ambassador Backers and Alvarez, dear colleagues. I would like to thank UNCTAD and in particular its newly appointed Secretary General, Mrs. Rebecca Greenspan, as well as the Division on Investment and Enterprise for organizing this truly memorable World Investment Forum 2021. It is a genuine honor and privilege to address you on behalf of the Republic of North Macedonia. These are challenging times for the world. It is therefore even more important for the global investment community to convene and discuss economic recovery and sustainable development post-COVID-19. But first, I would like to pay a tribute to human resilience and its incredible creativity, faced with an unprecedented plight. As the COVID-19 pandemic, humanity came together and mobilized all its capacity in order to tackle this invisible enemy, to mitigate the consequences of pandemics, and offer a brighter perspective for the post-COVID era. The COVID-19 pandemic has disrupted economic activity, including trade and investment, both within countries and amongst them. But it has also given us the opportunity to rebuild and reform international investment and the international production system through greater use of regional networks and international cooperation. Ladies and gentlemen, multilateralism, which is now needed more urgently than ever, should be a driving force, not only for resolving crises, but for strengthening the instruments and methods in assuring security, democracy, freedom, human rights, sustainable development, and prosperity for all. We must reinvigorate effective, inclusive, and dynamic multilateralism, which will give the sense of joint participation in shaping our destiny. As the Division on Investment and Enterprise notes in their World Investment Report and in this week's timely Global Investment Trends Monitor, global investment flows declined sharply during the crisis, and economic and investment recovery is precarious and may take some time. It is therefore a highly opportune time to convene the World Investment Forum and to come up with new economic recovery ideas and strategies aimed, on the one hand, at quickly recovering from the impact of COVID-19, and on the other, and in broader spirit of the UN SDGs, to rebuild economic activities in a way that supports long-term sustainable development. In this regard, I was especially appreciative of the Global Leaders Investment Summit on International Production and Productive Capacity. It was very useful to hear participants outline new strategies for the economic organization of the international supply chain that will, in future, concentrate more on regions. This will require greater cooperation amongst countries and may require technical support from organizations such as UNCTAD. In addition, I found very useful the launching of the new Global Alliance for Sustainable Investment Initiative in partnership with the World Economic Forum. I also welcome the forum's Ministerial Roundtable on Entrepreneurship and Sustainable Recovery post-COVID-19. SMEs constitute the backbone of economic activity in most countries and were particularly affected by the pandemic. This session generated new perspectives on the kinds of institutional changes that will be necessary to accommodate the innovations that have emerged during the pandemic, including the improvement of the digital preparedness of and their capacity to adhere to good ECG practices. Finally, I value and find very useful the Ministerial Roundtable on Investment for Sustainable Development. This session outlined new ideas on building back better by investing in infrastructure and social projects in North Macedonia. We believe the infrastructure to be the key to effectively joining the European Union's trading routes. It is clear that we need to expand our knowledge base to make sure we can effectively attract international private capital for infrastructure projects. And for this reason, embrace the initiative to start new research and policy analysis on international project finance. Dear friends, North Macedonia is committed to the sustainable agenda and has adopted a national strategy for sustainable development, as well as an action plan for sustainable development since 2015. Our belief is that by investing in SDGs, we ensure a sustainable development for our country that will result in continued economic growth, job creation, and increased prosperity for our citizens. The recession induced by during the COVID-19 pandemic period. And in order to support a faster recovery from the crisis, together with the EU and other partner international financial institutions, additional programs were designed to support the private sector. The government has identified the opportunities in the current crisis for restructuring, new priorities and habits. We need to attract effective investment to achieve our goals. Even though the COVID-19 pandemic has confined our interaction to the virtual world, the work of the missions and ambassadors has never been more important than during the crisis period. Multilateralism has regained the importance with the pandemic. We have been a significant voice for bridging national priorities and policies with the global agenda for timely, efficient, and equitable response to the pandemic and for negotiating the best ways towards a sustainable recovery after the COVID-19 crisis. In summary, I would like to once again thank the Prize for organizing this very important investment. Thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador, for your remarks. Now, I'm going to invite Rahman Hashmi, Ambassador and Permanent Representative of Pakistan to the UN and other international organizations in Geneva. Ambassador.
Thank you. Madam Secretary General, distinguished co-chairs, excellencies, dear colleagues. Let me start by commending UNCTAD and its investment and enterprise division for organizing yet another successful and productive edition of the World Investment Forum. Thank you also for this roundtable and for the opportunity to share some thoughts. The context and timing of this year's forum was significant because of the drivers and effects of the pandemic-induced downturn in global economic output. Obviously, the deceleration in economic growth in turn was mainly due to substantial drop of 42% in global FDI flows compared with 2019. As the World Investment Report of UNCTAD highlighted, this was the lowest level of FDI flows since the 1990s and more than 30% below the 2009 level after the global financial crisis. What is significant is the economic and social consequences arising from COVID-19, which have obviously hit the poor people in developing countries the hardest. Some of the indicators, for instance, include the SDG-related achievements made between 2015 and 2019 are now being reversed. There are over 100 million people likely to fall below extreme poverty levels, and over 250 million jobs have been lost. And if you look at the recent Trade and Development Report of UNCTAD, it says that developing countries will, through 2025, be $12 trillion poorer because of the pandemic, and that the failure to roll out vaccines could knock another 1.5 trillion from incomes across the South. In terms of economic recovery and FDI flows, the trajectory, as has been said by other colleagues, is uneven. High-income countries have more than doubled quarterly FDI inflows from rock bottom 2020 levels. Middle-income economies saw a 30% increase, and low-income economies a further 9% decline. Excellencies, with respect to key takeaways from the forum, I would list four. First was to mobilize investment and channel it towards SDGs, and this was more urgent than ever before. And to do this, bold and concrete actions are required. Second, neither public sector funds nor development flows, singly or combined, are adequate to fill the SDG gaps, SDG financing gaps. So there was this call for big push to attract private sector investments. Three, there were policy prods required to support investment in countries with the greatest needs. So there was this idea of sustainability bonds or SDG bonds to bridge the SDG financing gap in developing countries. Four, to attract FDI, there were, of course, calls for focusing on domestic reforms in the area of investment facilitation, including regulatory transparency, streamlining administrative processes, and dispute prevention. For us, we were pleased that our Prime Minister, Commerce Minister, and head of our Board of Investment participated in this year's forum. Excellencies, as the adage goes, no one is safe from COVID-19 until everyone is safe. This equally applies to economic recovery, given the globalized nature of the economy and interconnected nature of challenges such as climate change, the pandemic, and so on. The key challenge is not the absence or dearth of international capital or finance, especially from the private sector. The challenge is not even the rate of return on investments. We know that international investments do get between 10 to 12% rates of return. The issue is not even the impact of these investments, given that we have an internationally agreed framework of SDGs. I think the real challenge is the gap between demand and supply of international investments. We know that there is an annual shortfall of $4 trillion to meet the SDGs across the world. How do we bridge this gap between demand and supply in ways that it secures good returns on investments and creates the desired social and environmental impacts? That is the real challenge. I would like to echo the 4 points also articulated by our Prime Minister during his remarks delivered at the forum. First, to attract additional FDIs, it would be prudent to prioritize regulations and policies that are aimed at de-risking investments. To do so, deployment of public finance would be required. It would also require prioritizing and aligning investment flows with SDGs. Working together, multilateral development banks, development aid agencies, and private sector can play a major role to mitigate potential risks. This shift in approach can create substantial impacts in terms of human development, poverty alleviation, public health, education, jobs, and livelihoods. Second, the issue of credit rating. Currently, the global credit rating agencies have a short-term horizon of 1 year to determine sovereign ratings. This is too short a time frame, and it is a handicap for developing countries. This needs to change to a more long-term horizon to allow for a more reasonable sovereign rating mechanism. At the same time, many countries which are re-evaluating their national investment priorities and strategies would need to look for ways to mitigate the uncertain regulatory landscapes and protective approaches to some sectors. In doing so, they would need to do a balancing act vis-a-vis liberalization and states' right to regulate. So a combination of actions by credit rating agencies and national measures would go a long way. Third, the issue of dispute resolution. There are over 20,000 international investment agreements, many of which have encountered disputes between investors and states. So there is obviously a need to revisit the present approach with a special focus on reforming the investor-state dispute resolution mechanism. I would suggest placement of moratorium on claims that may arise due to the pandemic-induced investment disputes. As we know, and many have pointed out before me, UNCTAD has done commendable work to reform international investment agreements, including dispute resolution mechanism. These are proposals that really deserve serious consideration. Fourth, the issue of sustainable infrastructure. My country, Pakistan, has proposed an integrated sustainable infrastructure facility under the UN umbrella. The idea is for this facility to harmonize investment policies, provide assistance to developing countries for preparation of project and feasibility studies, and to access financing both from public and private sources. The required $1.5 trillion annual investment in sustainable infrastructure can be mobilized. Finally, in terms of enhanced role of Geneva PRs and their interaction with the business community and international organizations, I would propose that UNCTAD can consider organizing an annual dialogue forum with the participation of businesses and relevant UN and international organizations. This dialogue forum can focus on one SDG theme annually, for instance, on education or health, infrastructure, water and sanitation. And in doing so, UNCTAD can leverage its unique insights, expertise, and global network for this annual dialogue forum. I thank you.
Thank you, Ambassador, for your remarks. Now I'm going to give Ambassador of the Republic of South Africa.
Thank you very much, Madam Moderator. Let me start by thanking the SG and UNCTAD for convening this roundtable. While there are signs of economic recovery, it is clear that we are not building back better and are not recovering together. Vaccine inequity is the world's biggest obstacle to ending this pandemic and to economic recovery. A targeted and time-bound TRIPS waiver to boost and diversify production of COVID-19 medical products can contribute to this objective. The Economist Intelligence Unit estimates that the world economy could lose $2.3 trillion because of delayed vaccinations, with developing nations losing the most. As ambassadors, we need to negotiate a balanced TRIPS waiver that contributes to diversification of production across the world and preserves incentives for innovation, as well as develop a holistic WTO response to the pandemic that addresses all barriers. A conducive environment for investment will be possible when we address the pandemic. Investment policy can play a role in building resilient economies. To do so, it must provide incentives for investors to partner with host nations while retaining adequate policy space to regulate in the public interest. With support from UNCTAD, South Africa has modernized its investment policy framework and has established Invest South Africa, a one-stop shop on investment that simplifies administrative procedures and removes bottlenecks faced by investors in establishing and operating businesses in South Africa. South Africa, therefore, has the ecosystem to facilitate investment, including in the pharmaceutical sector. In relation to reigniting investment for sustainable recovery, we need UNCTAD to provide policy advice on the type of investments that can achieve this objective. We need an investment framework that balances economic, social, and environmental factors and protects and facilitates productive investments that contribute to a dynamic industrial sector, as well as investments that improve the quality and access to public health, green economy, and innovation. We should acknowledge that a sustainable economic recovery requires an international community that works in solidarity to address common challenges in a cooperative manner to achieve shared prosperity. This requires that we build on UNCTAD's investment framework for sustainable development. The engagement with the private sector is going to be important. We need the private sector that is willing to engage on development issues. Examples of powerful industry groups and businesses lobbying and acting without considering their impact on people and the planet must change. We need business models that are based on the principle of shared value and respond to challenges that are facing humanity. We need to create platforms that create a safe space for business and governments to engage in a solution-oriented mode to find solutions to development and common challenges that bedevil us. Roundtables can be held to exchange views. COVID-19 has revealed the importance of ensuring that no one is left behind and the need for an African continent that thrives. It has once more shown us the vulnerability of relying on production and exports of primary products and the risk of over-reliance on imports for vaccines, with Africa importing 99% of its vaccine needs. It has also emphasized the need for investments in local and regional hubs for the production of pharmaceutical products, not only for COVID-19, but for meeting our public health needs and the importance of addressing the digital divide. Africa must move up the global value chain and not only integrate in the value chains as a supplier of primary products. The investment policy framework must therefore support this agenda. Under the agreement establishing the AfCFTA, members are negotiating protocols on intellectual property rights, competition policy, and investment under phase 2 of the negotiations. South Africa is actively engaging in these negotiations. In the domain of investment, concluding a protocol is not an end in itself. Rather, the instrument must contribute to the objectives of the AfCFTA, as well as the developmental objectives as set out in Agenda 2063. Various Geneva-based international organizations must work with the African Union, as well as the AfCFTA Secretariat in the pursuit of making investment work for sustainable development and for achieving the Sustainable Development Goals. I thank you, Chair.
Thank you. Thank you, Ambassador, for your remarks. And now I'm going to give the floor to His Excellency, Mr. Ali Talib Abdelrahman Mahmoud, a permanent representative of the Republic of Sudan to the UN and other international organizations in Geneva. I think is he connected? Well, no, we'll see with the Secretariat. Now I'm going to give the floor to His Excellency, Mr. Didier Chambouvet, Ambassador and Permanent Representative of Switzerland to the WTO. Ambassador, please.
Thank you very much. Mrs. Secretary General, Ambassadors, good afternoon to everyone. It is a great pleasure to participate in this closing roundtable after a week of intense and fruitful exchanges dedicated to achieving sustainable development. As we all know, even before the pandemic struck, investment flows were insufficient to meet the 2030 agenda and its sustainable development goals. The crisis has further increased the gap. As the world slowly emerges from pandemic, significant ratcheting up of investment will be required to reverse income losses, increased inequalities and vulnerabilities, and boost employment. Now, how can we, as Geneva-based government representatives, and I refer here to question 1, how can we contribute to reigniting investment to reach sustainable recovery alongside the private sector and the international community? To achieve the mentioned development targets, Geneva and its permanent representatives have a role to play. Geneva is home to the WTO, which promotes an open and rules-based multilateral trade system, Good governance and a favorable investment climate are key to reigniting investment. Foreign direct investment can play a crucial role in meeting the SDGs, provided that social and environmental dimensions are duly taken into account. The mobilization of required resources can also be fostered by non-discriminatory access to international investment and adequate investment protection. We have discussed this issue in the high-level international investment agreement seminar this week, and especially how the reform treaty regime can enhance sustainable investment and sustainable development. An agreement on investment facilitation is currently being negotiated in the framework of the WTO. This agreement should facilitate investment by enhancing transparency and streamlining procedures for investors. It should also provide technical assistance. This will be one of the concrete contributions of the WTO to the Sustainable Development Goals. The UNCTAD, the Work Ban, the IFC in particular, but also other Geneva-based initiatives like the Alliance to Enable Action on Sustainable Investment that has been developed by the WEF, play a key role in navigating the discussions and give the right impetus for initiatives to be implemented. Geneva-based permanent representatives shape the positions within these institutions. On your second and third questions, what I would like to say is that Geneva has a unique ecosystem benefiting from the presence of numerous international organizations that work towards SDG implementation. Further, the city offers a broad spectrum of financial expertise, including in sustainable finance and impact investing. Opportunities are there for closer collaboration between the finance and the international development communities, each of them having their specific comparative advantages and roles. For example, Building Bridges is an initiative aiming at bringing these communities together in order to leverage more investments to achieve the SDGs. An event will take place in Geneva from the 29th of November to 2nd of December. As permanent representatives, based in such a dynamic environment, let us constantly reinforce cooperation across themes and actors to ensure and strengthen policy coherence and efficiency. Only then we will be able to stay on the trajectory of achieving the 2030 agenda. It is time to move from words to action and to build on the main takeaways of this insightful 7th World Investment Forum to pave the way forward for an inclusive and sustainable recovery. I would like to take the opportunity to thank the organizer for a successful and useful forum. Thank you for your attention.
Thank you, Ambassador, for your remarks. Now I'm going to give the floor to His Excellency Rongudi Irabur, Ambassador and Permanent Representative of the Mission of Thailand to the UN and other international organizations in Geneva. Ambassador.
Thank you. Thank you, Madam Chair, for allowing me to take the floor. Madam Chair, Excellencies, ladies and gentlemen. As Charge d'Affaires, I'm delivering this statement on behalf of His Excellency Rongudi Irabur, Ambassador and Deputy Permanent Representative of Thailand, who could not be here due to unexpected circumstances. First and foremost, Thailand wishes to thank UNCTAD World Investment Forum, in particular, Director John, for successfully hosting the 7th World Investment Forum. The past few days have been illuminating for any of us interested in how to recover from the effects of the pandemic on the world economy. Thanks to the various forum sessions, the diplomatic community in Geneva has learned how global leaders, leading entrepreneurs, and civil society can and have contributed to sustainable investment during those past 18 months of economic hardship. It has been disheartening to hear that COVID-19 caused a collapse in investment flows to sectors related to the SDGs in developing countries and exacerbates decline in sector already weak before the COVID-19 crisis. I believe that the purpose of this roundtable is to provide answers to the question of what diplomats here in Geneva can do to cushion the economic fall and to boost sustainable recovery. The role of investment used to be the domain of our embassies, but the ties that the Thai mission has made with international organizations in Geneva have strongly assisted in this endeavor in several ways. First, we have been hard at work introducing the bio-circular green economy model, aka BCG model, to the global community through UNCTAD and its CSTD as a means to reach out to other member states. We have explained in various fora how sustainable recovery has been at the heart of Thailand's national agenda, particularly with the introduction of the BCG model, which is a part of Thailand's post-COVID-19 national recovery strategy. Guided by the sufficiency economy philosophy, Thailand's homegrown development approach that emphasizes human empowerment and resilient building, the BCG model looks to build back better towards a sustainable and inclusive future and beyond recovery towards achieving the SDGs by 2030. Secondly, our role has included promoting to the international community important policies such as the Sustainable Finance Initiatives for Thailand, including developing a practical green taxonomy, improving the data environment, implementing effective incentive in sustainable financial products, creating a demand for sustainable financial products and services, and building human resources in sustainable finance-related skills. Making use of BCG model principles, in September 2020, the Thai government issues a 30 billion Thai baht sustainability bond to finance green infrastructure and social impact projects, supporting Thailand's recovery from the COVID-19 pandemic, such as public health measures, job creation through small and medium-sized enterprises, and local public infrastructure development with social and environmental benefits. Thirdly, in frameworks such as the World Economic Forum, we are actively connecting the private sector to investment opportunities in Thailand. We have informed potential investors of Thailand's promotion measures for investments that will reduce impact on the environment, support sustainable development, and participate in the development of the BCG model. As you can see, we play the same role in spirit as UNCTAD and the WIF. Our role as diplomats within the multilateral framework has been that of informing and connecting. In this regard, we invite those of you, including the private sector and civil society, to make use of our presence here in Geneva and to work with us to advance sustainable recovery. I thank you.
Thank you for your remarks. Ahora tengo el gusto de dar la palabra a su excelencia, el embajador Héctor Constant, embajador y representante permanente de la misión de Venezuela ante Naciones Unidas y otras organizaciones internacionales en Ginebra. Embajador.
Gracias, estimada embajadora, señora presidenta, estimadas y estimados amigos, para mí un placer encontrarme con ustedes. Agradecemos, por supuesto, a la Secretaría de la UNCTAD.
We're grateful to the UNCTAD Secretariat for the valuable efforts to make this 7th World Investment Forum a reality despite the critical reality we all face due to the pandemic of COVID-19. We would like to express our appreciation for the active participation for the various stakeholders in the investment of more than 160 countries and the renewed interest after the COVID-19 pandemic, especially developing economies that have borne the brunt of the pandemic. And this is an important event that helps us to address the main challenges for investment. A lot's been said over the course of this week, and particularly today, we've just heard a large number of statements that all point to the conclusion of this event and yet ratify the importance of the role of UNCTAD, within which we need to perhaps define the mandate of some. I think we need to create a ripe environment and establish clear, predictable contours for investment flows, for FDI to developing countries, because that's all part of the common interest that we have seen expressed in this event. We also think it's essential that we continue to conduct research and technical analysis and provide options for development. We also, in the context of the international investment regime, we need to work on coherence and renewal and include issues such as the right to regulate public policies and public investments at the same time that we're developing guidelines and for the various political options for renewal of international agreements in support of the achievement of the SDGs. Merely a day ago in my country, Dr. Rodriguez took part in the Ministerial Roundtable, which was to invest in sustainable development. And there was mention of how investment in the world has not promoted sustainable development. There needs to be effort to ensure that we preserve our environment as we laid out in the Johannesburg statement in 2002. We have identified a number of obstacles, and I mention in particular the application of illegal, cruel, inhumane, unilateral coercive measures on the part of a number of some governments against my country and against other countries within our international system. And this has a harmful effect on the welfare of those countries. And so, in the spirit of trying to strengthen multilateralism, I would like to appeal. The interpreter apologizes, but the sound is cutting in and out. We will do our best, but we are missing some words. We need to clearly have continued, permanent, effective aid from UNCTAD in order to ensure that our future plans in Venezuela and elsewhere allow us to tackle the challenges ahead. And we are sure that, as I said, a specific study by UNCTAD on the impact of the unilateral measures and the economic impact that this creates would be very helpful in developing a strategy. Madam Ambassador, I would like to echo some speakers who went before me who insisted on the need for solidarity, including it within trade, that takes into account the environment, climate change, and welfare, and puts human beings at the heart of our common action. Ambassador, greetings to you and to all. Thank you.
Gracias a usted, embajador.
Thank you, Ambassador, for your...
And now I'm going to give the floor to His Excellency Li Chenggang, Ambassador and Permanent Representative of China to the WTO. Ambassador.
Thank you, Co-Chair. Sorry, Ambassador Lee is not available this afternoon. So please allow me to extend my to his apology, and also allow me to attend this meeting on behalf of Ambassador Lee. Excellencies, as we speak, COVID-19 is still raging across the world. Controlling the pandemic still poses a difficult challenge, while global economy recovery is still on shaky ground. For member states of UNCTAD, defeating COVID-19 and restoring growth are our top priority for the time being. Investment is a major engine for global economic growth. The 7th World Investment Forum focuses on investing in sustainable recovery, addressing today's key challenge facing the global investment development community. It will play an important role in countries' efforts to respond to the pandemic and restore economic growth. We must enhance solidarity and cooperation to overcome the impact of the pandemic, give full play to the role of FDI, and boost the global economic recovery. Excellencies, China is ready to strengthen cooperation with UNCTAD and join efforts with other member states to revitalize the economy and pursue more robust, greener, and more balanced global development. First, staying committed to development as a priority. We needed to put development at the center of the international cooperation. UNCTAD could further strengthen cooperation with agencies within and outside of the UN system to promote policy coordination among countries, foster global development partnerships that are more equal and balanced, and contribute through its 3 pillars of work to the full implementation of the 2030 Agenda for Sustainable Development. Second, staying committed to benefits for all. We should care about the special needs of developing countries. Through productive capacity building, UNCTAD could assist the developing countries in enhancing their investment promotion capacities, accelerate structural transformation, increase the added value of their domestic economies, more effectively link domestic economies to global value chains, and address inequality across and within countries. Third, staying committed to mobilizing more investment in the SDGs. Building on its achievements in recent years, UNCTAD could play a critical role in further integrating sustainable development as defined by the SDGs along the entire investment value chain, from upstream financial assets owners to companies creating jobs on the ground, and help mobilize more long-term investment for sustainable development, in particular in developing countries. Fourth, staying committed to innovation-driven development. FDI has been an effective channel for technological and knowledge development. Through policy dialogue and proposing policy options on investment for development, UNCTAD could assist developing countries to improve their investment climate, reignite investment engine, seizing opportunities created by the latest round of technology revolution and industrial transformation, so as to foster new growth drivers in the post-COVID era and promote green recovery and development. I thank you for your attention.
Thank you for your remarks. Now I'm going to give the floor to Her Excellency, Ms. Lotte Knudsen, Ambassador of the European Union to the UN and other international organizations and Geneva.
Thank you, Chair, and dear Excellencies. At the outset, allow me to pass sincere apologies for this last-minute change in the availability of Ambassador Knudsen to participate in this roundtable. I will deliver the intervention on her behalf. First of all, we would like to congratulate UNCTAD Secretariat and in particular Director James Jean and his team for another outstanding edition of the World Investment Forum. The number of high-quality debates and interventions featured during this past week only confirms UNCTAD's important role and significant convening power on the issue of investments. During the week, many significant messages, challenges, and ideas were voiced. Perhaps at this stage, we would like to single out three separate yet highly interconnected issues. First, the pandemic accentuated the already significant investment gap in developing countries for meeting the SDGs. And while the recovery measures were significant and early 2021 figures indicate an important FDI rebound, this positive news is largely bypassing the low-income countries. Second, we need to further boost productive investment beyond the pre-pandemic levels if we are to bring us back on track towards the 2030 agenda. This requires domestic and international complementary action. And third, we need to make sure that the new investments are well framed so they contribute to our shared objectives of building back better and greener. We need investment not only to reignite our economies, but also to make them more resilient, digital, and sustainable. In the EU, we have put in action various initiatives to address these three challenges, domestically and internationally. And allow me to mention only a few examples with a particular relevance for developing countries and for UNCTAD's work. Our external investment facilities, which have been growing and evolving since the first investment promotion actions were launched in North Africa, Central Asia, and Latin America between 2008 and 2010, have a noteworthy track record on stimulating productive investment, but also on supporting the identification of bankable investment projects. The flagship EU External Investment Plan, launched in 2017, targeted in particular vulnerable countries and the attainment of SDGs in Africa. So far, averaged more than 50 billion euro of investment, supporting the expected creation of more than 5.2 million jobs. Improving and simplifying the investment climate are often highlighted in investor surveys as the critical factors for attracting investment flows and unearthing the untapped potential in developing countries. In this sense, the EU is proposing to interested partners new sustainable investment instruments with a focus on investment facilitation and coupled with capacity building. We are already discussing with Angola such a sustainable investment facilitation agreement and are engaging broader with our partners in Africa in this sense. Complementing such bilateral actions, the EU is very supportive and participates actively in the initiative on investment facilitation for development at the WTO. Given UNCTAD's experience and track record on working with developing countries on policy refinement and investment reforms, we consider UNCTAD as a key actor in contributing to this agreement's successful implementation. And last but not least, we must ensure that the pursued domestic investment climate, as well as the international tools and activities, actively support resilient, inclusive, and sustainable investment. The EU attaches great importance to creating an investment climate conducive to attracting such sustainable and responsible investment. For instance, by consistently including ambitious sustainable development provisions in our investment agreements, such as principles on responsible business conduct and respect for environment, human rights, and labor standards. This is a responsibility shared by all countries and the entire private sector. We would encourage UNCTAD to build on the already noteworthy work done in this sense to further integrate resilience and sustainability considerations in its research and its recommendations on investment policy. Thank you very much.
Thank you for your remarks. Now I have the honor to hand over the session to the Secretary General of UNCTAD and to listen her remarks to close the 7th World Investment Forum. Ms. Grispan, you have the floor.
Excellencies, distinguished delegates, dear friends, let me begin by thanking you for your participation and wisdom this week. We appreciate your commitment to the values and mission of the World Investment Forum to promote investment for sustainable development and prosperity for all. I am happy to say that this forum was a great success. As of last night, the World Investment Forum 2021 was attended by more than 8,000 participants. It gathered 12 heads of state and government, 54 ministers, 24 heads of international organizations, and countless policymakers and legislators, including parliamentarians, heads of investment promotion agencies, treaty negotiators, and regulators. From the private sector, this year's forum attracted some 70 CEOs of multinationals and stock exchanges, pension funds, sovereign wealth funds, family businesses, and executives of countless other companies. It also brought together entrepreneurs, both big and small, as well as investors and data providers working in the investment and development space. And from civil society, the forum successfully integrated the voices of thought leaders, academia, non-governmental and non-for-profit organizations, as well as the media. As you have seen this week, was again an expression of UNCTAD's proud tradition of inclusivity and multi-stakeholder dialogue. The World Investment Forum has contributed greatly to this tradition. We are also very aware of our obligation to ensure geographical and gender parity. 35% of our speakers and panelists were women, and 60% were from the Global South. This is very good, but there is still work to do to continue our efforts towards gender parity. I want to take this opportunity to thank our 68 partner organizations with whom we organized this forum's 91 sessions. And I very much want to recognize the great job that James Shan and his team did for the forum to be such a success. Ladies and gentlemen, the World Investment Forum took place at a challenging but pivotal time for our global economy. We are still reeling from the impact of the pandemic, but trade and investment seem to have turned a corner. Global investment is growing again. We have highlighted this positive trend, still flagging the very worrying fact that investment in developing countries is not performing well, and that it is still declining in the least developed countries. This World Investment Forum followed on the heels of UNCTAD 15, which concluded in Barbados just 2 weeks ago. As such, this forum was the first step on the road to implement the outcomes of the Bridgetown Covenant that relate to investment and enterprise. In that vein, we discussed many ways to make investment work better for sustainable development. We identified new paths for global value chains to continue providing security and development impact through opportunities, such as regionalization and nearshoring. We identified ways in which the private sector can work with governments to finance the recovery, leveraging public funds to invest in SDGs and close the funding gap for the 2030 agenda. And we also identified how governments, investment promotion agencies, and special economic zones can maximize their effectiveness in this digital world, upgrading their strategies to steer investment towards the most vulnerable. And in advance of COP26, we discussed the leadership role investors can take in bringing the world to carbon neutrality. All of this resulted in some important outputs, which I would like now to highlight. There were 3 ministerial meetings during the forum: the Ministerial Roundtable on Enterprise, the Ministerial Roundtable on Investment, and the LDC Ministerial and Business Roundtable. The contribution of the ministers towards many interesting policy ideas and priorities was very important. This will feed the discussions at the General Assembly in support of the upcoming resolutions on investment for sustainable development that is ongoing and on entrepreneurship that will be next year. It will also fit into the debate for the LDC 5 conference, which will take place in Doha next year. Let me turn now to other concrete deliverables from the forum. It is difficult to know where to begin. It is almost impossible to cover the full range of results and outcomes, large and small, from a forum with so many events on such a wide range of topics. But let me try. First, we announced several community building initiatives. We initiated the Global Alliance for Sustainable Investment to support international investment in sustainable development, together with our partners at the World Economic Forum, the World Bank, the OECD, WIPA, AIB, IISD, and others. We launched the Global Sustainable Financial Observatory, bringing together financial market stakeholders to improve the transparency and integrity of sustainability-labeled financial products. We launched an online sustainability reporting platform with the Family Business for Sustainable Development Initiative, starting a dialogue with an important sector that is often overlooked. We announced a global alliance of special economic zones to exchange best practices and organize joint activities to make future zones work for sustainable development. And finally, we announced a new cooperation agreement with the IFC as part of our existing Sustainable Stock Exchange initiative. In all-female roundtable with 6 women CEOs of stock exchanges, we launched a joint IFC SSE database tracking gender equality on corporate boards around the world. And we launched several new policy tools and new research initiatives too. We launched together with the German Development Agency, the African Union, and the African Economic Zones Organization, the Handbook on Special Economic Zones in Africa. This handbook will guide our work with these partners to improve free zone performance and sustainability in Africa over the coming years. Also, we agreed with key partners on 3 concrete new research initiatives on the implications for investment policy of ongoing reforms in international taxation, on international project finance in sustainable infrastructure, and on the development opportunities arising from investment by SMEs. These research initiatives are not standalone. Through the academic track in our partnership with the Academy of International Business, the forum developed a new multidisciplinary research agenda on investment for development that will be set out in the next issue of our academic journal for transnational corporations. Third, we furthered our coordination with key partners in technical assistance and capacity building work. We are especially grateful to our colleagues in other international organizations for continuing to engage with us at the WIF, starting new initiatives and strengthening existing ones. For example, this forum created a new alliance with ESCWA and UNITAR that will build and disseminate learning tools on digital government. And finally, as is tradition at the World Investment Forum, we celebrated. We celebrated the winners of our award programs. I congratulate again the winners of the Investment Promotion Agency Awards, the International Standards for Accountant Reporting Awards, the Family Business Awards, and the Sustainable Funds Awards. Ladies and gentlemen, this is the start of a journey. And as part of this journey, I call on everyone here, but particularly you, permanent representative, to continue supporting UNCTAD's work in this area. Work that is much needed and has a key role to play at this seminal point in time. At my opening remarks this week, I argued that we live in a world where shocks shouldn't shock us any longer, where the years between crises are crucial to build resilience. We have before us a new window of opportunity to close gaps, reduce fragility, and promote sustainability. We must not waste this opportunity. The lives of many people in the world depend on it. A big thank to all of you, Investment for Development stakeholders, for joining us at the wave. Thank you to the permanent representative of the countries that are our member states. I believe we will strengthen our collaboration towards the years, and I am sure we will meet again at the next World Investment Forum. I thank you.